Inshallah, as the partition is being brought, we'll ask the brothers, once they're finished, if they can move to this side, inshallah. Move to the left side, your left side, so inshallah we could have everyone here. Jazakumullah khairan for everyone who's here. It's a very important topic. And as a partition comes here, I ask the sisters upstairs if they could proceed downstairs, inshallah, including the two sisters who will be presenting tonight. In light of time, what are we doing this here today for? In the last few months, many people in our community have been facing tragedies, from car accidents, children passing away. And if there's no support mechanism and system in place, then things that we don't expect can happen. That's exactly what happened in Allen. All we can say is that a family suffered a tragedy 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, their daughter died in a swimming accident, a 4-year-old daughter. Since there was no mechanism put in place from the greater community, is what I'll say, last night or 2 nights ago, we lost the entire family. So we can either sit idle and pray janazah after janazah, or we can say, you know what, there are problems, and we all face problems. How can we understand the problems, the signs of problems, and get ahead of these problems from intensifying to the point where people die? In today's janazah was a 2-year-old child, a 12-year-old child, a mother, and a father. And what I understand as a premise behind that was the inability to cope with the loss of one of their child passing away. 2 years ago in Allen, we had the same thing. A family of 6 passed away. And we as a community are better than that, so long we have the tools, the knowledge, and the resources to be better. So as the sisters come, inshallah, we ask for our counselors to come up here, inshallah. We will begin, inshallah. Sheikh Arslan tonight is with the community. He is from Allen, mashallah, and he's there supporting and representing us there, inshallah. But we will proceed here also tonight as we will pray for the community and the family, and we will mourn together, and inshallah, we will grow stronger together, inshallah. So with that, we will begin, inshallah. Those are by the wire. You have a magic trick for that? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي زدني علما والحقني بالصالحين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, tonight, inshallah, I want to take a few minutes and speak about what spiritual tools are in place for us all, that not only should we notice their existence, but we should use them for the betterment of our community, thereby for the betterment of ourselves. When we are empowered by our religion, we are able to help others first. And that is how we help ourselves. We learn in our hadith, the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that not to underestimate any good deed, even if it is smiling at your Muslim brother or sister. Who knows, that smile that you give to someone could be a means of saving their life. And I'm saying it literally, saving their life. Because if there is a fact in our world today, everyone is struggling and everyone is drowning. We all have something that's pulling on us, yanking us, or that's anchored to us and taking us down. It could be our personal issues, financial issues, family issues, marital issues, societal issues. We all have some problem. But it is not practical in our deen to mask those problems, put on a farce look, and go out and say, I'm good and everything is good. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to sit with the Sahaba every day after Fajr. And in those discussions, not only would he interpret dreams, but that would be an opportunity for people to come in the beginning of the day and talk to him and express to him their problems. So counseling, speaking, talking is a big part of our deen. But we don't understand that. And I don't know why. So what I want to do is point out two real valid tools in our deen, and inshallah part that to the community, and inshallah and myself, how can we use these two tools in this time of desperation and need? May Allah grant us all tawfiq. Ameen. The first point here, and I want to be real inshallah, is communication. Having the ability to say even salam. How many of us here, and please show me your hands, have entered the masjid and exited the masjid and no one gave them salam? How many of us have entered the masjid and exited the masjid and no one asked, how are you? How many of us entered the masjid and exited the masjid and no one asked, do you need something? Is that good or is that bad? Is that good or bad? Is that what's supposed to happen in a masjid? My brothers and sisters, what is this place for us? The house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is where we don't just spiritually fulfill the prerequisites and requirements of our deen, but it's where we can become closer. It's where we can get to know people we don't know. It's a place where we can do an act of charity by smiling before swiping a credit card on the mohid. It's a place where we can give a gesture of hope to someone who is suffering from hopelessness. I want us tonight to take the tool of communication to the next level. And that is that we all must start talking to someone from tonight that we don't know their name. We don't know their culture, we don't know their background. Why so? Because that's the first step towards stabilizing a person who is falling into abyss. Many times you'll see people come to a masjid, they'll come to a masjid, an Islamic center, and they're sitting or they're lying down, and they're just like, Allah, I just need something from you. Yes or no? We need something from Allah. But that comes from Allah, yes, but it also comes in the form of people. And I'll talk about that very soon. When Musa alayhi salam was in that state of desperation and loss, he made a dua, oh Allah, I need anything good from you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent one of those two girls who he helped earlier that day to invite him back home because the father said so. It's a testament of the fact that human connection and interaction is vital for our stability and sanity. Is everyone with me, yes or no? So what I want from us is, mashallah, we do have people we know in the congregation, family members, friends, and we see many times after Maghrib and Isha and sometimes after Jumu'ah, there are circles of people standing and talking. That's fine. Once Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told a group of Sahaba who used to stand in the pathway not to do that. He said, don't do this. They said, no, but we want to, Ya Rasulullah. So he said, if you want to, then remember there is a right of the path. And that is you give salam to people. You don't cause inconvenience in their way. And you allow them to move freely. So if we want to continue our circles of communication, let's change it up a bit. From tonight, we're not going to speak to the people we always speak to, but we're going to go find someone and start speaking with them. Say, inshallah. We're going to ask them their name and tell them our name. And we're going to make an effort to make sure that they and we smile as we exit the masjid. Say, inshallah. If a person exits this masjid with a smile, you don't know how much ajr you've gained from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You may have given them hope to go to sleep tonight and wake up another day. You have given them the strength to believe that they can overcome their problems. Because my brothers and sisters, if we can't help each other, who then do we expect help from? It is not possible in a Muslim community like Dallas, where people are suffering in silence, where a family takes judgment in their own hand, feeling that there's no hope out there, and that's better to leave this world than to stay in this world. So what's the first tool, everyone? Communication. Start talking to each other. Say inshallah. Then number 2, real talk, the second point, and with that I'll conclude and send it to our sisters, mashallah, who are here, licensed therapists, mashallah, both of them, is the facts of our religion. The fact of our religion is that tests are a part of life. Irrespective if you are a believer or not, you will be tested. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Holy Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ. Anyone who's taken sarf and has learned verbs in Arabic, they understand that the lam and the noon is what we call lam ta'keed, noon ta'keed, which means emphasis and emphasis, double emphasis. We will certainly, undoubtedly test you all. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ. We are going to test all of you. So never should it cross your mind, what's happening in my life? I'm having problems in my home, my children, my marriages, my job. What's happening? Is Allah punishing me? Why do we always go to the punishment? Why is that the knee-jerk response? Because shaitan presents that first. Shaitan goes, take this cup. Allah hates you. Allah's punishing you. Allah wants you to fail. And we grab it. When Allah Himself said, we're going to test you. There's no one in this hall, there's no one in this world who is not tested. If we're able to see life from the lens of spirituality, we will not fall victim to the whisper shaitan puts in our heads. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ. We are certainly without doubt going to test you all. بِشَيْءٍ. With some. What does that mean? Allah will test us all a little. Allah has and will never open the floodgates on us of tests. Even when Qawm Lut was thrown upside down and when the storms were unleashed on this earth, when the punishment of Allah came, when the winds howled on Qawm Ad or Qawm Thamud, Allah put a hole in the power of wind. He didn't open the floodgates of it. Do you understand? Allah will test us all a little. How much is that little? Allah tells us, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Whatever you're going to be given from goodness, it's to your capacity. Whatever you're going to be tested with hardships and illness and problems, it's to your capacity. Meaning, Allah knows your capacity, and those tests fall under the capacity, not over the capacity. Bishay'in. We're all going to be. Accept it, my sisters and brothers. Accept it. It's from Allah. What is it from Allah? A punishment. What is it? Test. A test. Min al-ju'i. Min al-ju'i. Hunger. What happens in the state of hunger? A person becomes frustrated, agitated, mad. Sahaba became mad. It was already hunger. There's already scarcity of food. And here they're being told in the heat of Arabia, dig a trench. What is this thing? This is something Arabs never did. They never dug trenches. This was a Persian ideology for war. And as they're digging the trench, they're starting to whisper to each other, can't do this. Haven't eaten for days. Oh, I haven't eaten for weeks. Oh my God, what are you doing about it? Oh, I got a stone tied to my stomach. Really, I have one too. Guess what? That was the norm of Medina even before the advent of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hunger was known to be in that place. That's why when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam built the society, Islam was building societies. Prove me wrong. They established farms, hospitals, schools, markets, because a society will flourish with faith if they have the tools to build their faith. So as they were in this anguish, they said, we're going to go to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and tell him, we can't do this. Look at us. We're hungry. Look at our stomachs. They're gone in. We're putting stones to keep our backs up. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard them. What did he do? He heard them. Could everyone say that? He heard them. He listened to them. He heard them out. Going back to our first point. We should all be such a community and a family that everyone's ready to hear someone else. As Imam Abdurrahman Bashir said today, we may not be therapists or experts, but when someone can just talk to you and you can just listen, that helps them cope, even if it's temporarily. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after listening to them and understanding them and empathizing with them, he lifted up his blessed clothing, and what was beneath it? 2 stones were tied. Meaning, I'm in this with you. Never ever feel that someone is better than me or worse than me that I shouldn't go to them. Does that make sense? Someone is so good and pious that they'll never understand me. We should never be like that. We should be with the people. And nor should we think someone is so low and so bad that why should I go to them? A Sahabi was coming to Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh to ask him a problem that he was facing at home with his family. And when he approached to his door, he saw Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh standing outside the door, and his wife was scolding him from inside. His wife was telling him off, and he's standing there listening. That Sahabi got cold feet. He's like, I'm going home. So Abu Bakr Siddiq goes, hey, come, you have a question. It's like, you got bigger fish to fry. You got a bigger problem. You take care of your house, I'll take care of my house. And he insisted, tell me what's going on. He goes, I had some problem, and you having the same problem. But guess what? They were able to give advice to each other. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed we're in this together. Min al-khawfi, min al-ju'i wal-khawfi. If you want to understand fear, understand the fear of Musa alayhi salam. That when he killed this person, this Qibti, and he ran to this other town, he was in utter fear. Who came to his aid? Humans did. But I'm going to tell you what attaches the humans with this verse. Humans came to his aid, which gave him the support, the strength, a job, a life, marriage, and then he became a messenger of Allah, and he went back to Fir'aun. وَنَقْسٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. If you want to understand these 3, shortness, like decrease in wealth, life, health, and in your possessions, Ayyub alayhi salam. Ayyub alayhi salam lost it all. He lost his wealth, he lost his family, he lost his health. But who was at his aid, everyone? Who was at his aid? One human, his wife. Now, before I end this verse, I want to tell you what's the connection between all 3 of these. Where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba are facing hunger, and Ayyub alayhi salam is facing these adverse situations, and Musa alayhi salam is suffering from the unknown and the fear of the unknown, all 3 of them did one thing which we must revive today. And that is turning your affairs back to Allah. Musa alayhi salam said what? Inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. Oh Allah, whatever's up there, send it down to me. Whatever whatever it is. I'm not going to tell you it's enough or it's less, it's hot, it's cold, it's trending or it's old. Allah, whatever is there, send it down. Ayub alayhi salam said, Anni massaniya dur wa anta arhamur rahimin. I'm facing such taklif and pain, but you're the most merciful. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is making dua as they're digging the trench, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the 3 promises at that time. What am I saying here? Learn to hand your affairs back to Allah. Stop feeling the need to be man enough or woman enough or strong enough to hold your affairs. Look at our physique. Allah made us stand on 2 legs. Look at all the animals that carry loads. They stand on 4. A camel, a horse, a donkey, a mule. They're on 4. You put weight on their back and they'll walk with it. Allah made them to carry weight. Allah didn't make us to carry weight. And that is why deen and spirituality is so essential. If we're not listening to the adhan, if we're not reciting the Quran, if we're not performing our salah, the more we weaken our spiritual force, thereby empowering the outside elements of shaitan's whispers. So what do you do here? Number 1 was communicate. Create a community once more, inshallah. Number 2, hand your affairs to Allah like a ball that you throw to your child. Your child throws you a ball, you throw it back. Allah will throw tests at us. Yes, sometimes those tests will come fast and hard, maybe over 100 miles per hour, like a pitcher in MLB pitches. The catcher has a glove which is different than everyone else's glove. It's thick and it's padded. That ball hits and he throws it right back. Allah will throw situations, send it back to Allah. Allah will test us. Ask Allah to help you, because if Allah is not there to help us, no one will help us. So what was number 1, everyone? Let us start talking to each other, inshallah. What's number 2? What's number 2? Spirituality, throwing it back to Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us all. May Allah be with us all. May Allah give us the level of iman to understand that the Allah that gave us the test, gave us the ability to endure the test, and will give us something better beyond the test. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be one ummah, one community, to grieve together, to mourn together, to celebrate together, to be happy with one another. May Allah protect us from such tragedies occurring in our community, in our ummah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our state of affairs better. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. We'll hand it off to inshallah Dr. Nazia, mashallah. We're thankful to her for being here tonight, inshallah, and she will, inshallah, present from a different angle, inshallah. Bismillah.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu It's a great honor to come here, and Brother Manzoor texted me today. I remember putting the bricks down for this masjid when it first started, and also starting the youth group back in 2003, because I felt a need to have a Muslim community, felt a lack of communication with that. At Plano Senior High, I was the only hijabi, and Plano Masjid was my place of comfort. So tonight, just like Imam Azhar said, communication is so important, right? So a few weeks ago, this little girl died, 4 years old, in her pool. And the parents were devastated. They had a 2-year-old and 12-year-old. And today they were buried together in the same casket. And that was just so hard for me to watch. I couldn't take my own children. But I'm here to say, yeah, we're therapists, but you can talk to anybody, right? That salam, that smile you give could be life or death. So Allah gave us 2 ears and a tongue for a reason. And the Prophet ﷺ said, our Muslim ummah is like a body, right? If any part of it is in pain, that pain is not isolated. The entire body feels that pain. And so when Imam Azhar, he's going to come here and talk to you in Plano, our neighbor in Allen is hurting tonight, right? We can all listen to each other, hear each other out. There are many new faces. And you're right, I come to Jummah and I know people from the old days, but I see people that are new as well, and I reach out, say salam, because you never know what they're going through. So you'd have to be a therapist. You could always reach out after your salah and give someone salam and smile and just be there for them, because you don't know what they're going through. And then you could bring them to a licensed therapist. There's a process for that, but just being there and hearing them out is so important, that communication part. And he touched on the spirituality. I was going to go over some do's and don'ts of talking about death and grief, because I see lots of parents here. First, tell the truth about what happened right away. Being open and emotional can help your child learn how to mourn. Be prepared of a variety of emotional responses. Realize, however you approach the subject, your child will be upset and perhaps even angry at loss, right? And when we're talking about loss, it doesn't have to be death. It could be, some other devastation or separation from loved ones, whether it's like a career change, dad is working far away, or natural disasters, even grandparents leaving. Grief could be a number of things. Make sure you use the words dead or died. Yeah, they're uncomfortable, but that's a truth, and research shows that using realistic words to describe death during grief helps the process. Share information in doses, so gauge what your kids can handle, like maybe, tell them tonight, or maybe tell them before Jummah, but talk to them about this. And be comfortable saying, I don't know. Having all the answers is never easy, and as parents, we don't. As a therapist, there are many times where I say, I don't have the answers, and that's okay. Cry together, cry often. Crying is healing. And let your child grieve in his or her own way. Allow your child to be silent when they need to and talk when they need to. Prepare your child for the future without that loved one if someone passes, and prepare to talk about thoughts and feelings often, right? When your kids come home from school, even if they're in college, just always check in, not how was your day, but ask them more thoughtful, open-ended questions, because mourning is a process. And most importantly, remember to take care of yourself. As parents, as adults, we sometimes forget that we matter. So it's important to, come to the masjid, do our salah, come to the classes, just have a sense of community and sense of belonging. Some don'ts. Don't hide grief from your children. They see you, they see your hurt. Today during the janazah, my kids were asking, like, why are you sad? And I told them part of it, and they're watching me right now. But we'll talk. Don't be afraid to share memories of your loved ones. Don't avoid connecting your child because you feel helpless. Don't change the subject when your child comes in the room if you're talking to your spouse. Don't think that death puts a ban on laughter. You can still smile and have joy. And don't put a time limit to your child's bereavement or your own, right? Death is heavy. Janazas are hard. Hearing about these things are hard as well, but there's no limit, right? It's supposed to be heavy. It's okay to cry. It's okay to not be okay. But talk to somebody you trust. And if you don't have anyone you trust, you could reach out to the masjid. They have Sakina services. We're available here. Nobody's alone, and you don't have to do it alone. And Zuhaira here is my friend from childhood, and I called her to join me here. She's also a licensed therapist and school counselor at BHA.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Yeah? Okay. Assalamu alaikum, you guys. I really don't know what to add on to you and her. Mashallah, you guys have basically said everything that I can think of. But a few perspectives that sometimes I think of differently just because I work with a lot of kids and youth, because I am working at Bright Horizons Academy right now. And, you always think of what's the best way to talk to your kids, or even, okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the best way to talk to one another? And I really want to go back to the point that you said that it's okay to say you don't know, even as an adult, even to your friend, to your spouse, to your family, to your children. I think that sense of humbleness is really important. I think we forget and we think that we have to have all the answers and we have to look so strong and we have to be tough and we don't cry. And I think that we forget, like, the best example, subhanAllah, was the Prophet ﷺ, right? That the year of sorrow, one of the worst years of his life, he cried. So if the Prophet can cry, then why can't we cry, right? And sometimes crying just needs to happen. You need to shed those tears. You need to feel the pain in order to get through what you need to go through. And I also wanted to mention, I'm so glad you said that, is that grief is not just about death, right? But when we think of our community, subhanAllah, just like Allen itself in the past couple of years, regardless of whether it's a Muslim community or not, has gone through so much.
Yeah.
With the family a couple of years ago, and then the Allen shootings in Allen outlets, I had students that witnessed it, and they were in the mall when it happened, and they saw, the shootings, and they saw people die in front of them. And now this, regardless of what the circumstances are, it also is a good reminder of mental health. And I feel like we forget that mental health and Islam actually coincide, and that part of Islam, a huge part of Islam, is mental health and taking care of your soul inside and out, your brain, everything, right? Emotionally, physically, spiritually, all those things are part of what the deen entails. And I just think we forget that. We have a stigma, even with counselors, or go to the imam, or go to a counselor. There's really nothing wrong with that. You know, we keep going back to what the Prophet ﷺ did in the Shura and sitting, and he had friends and he had advisors. They all sat together and they talked about things. So we're not any different. And if anything, we need to have these conversations a lot more than we ever did. And again, I don't personally even know the circumstances of what happened yesterday, but regardless of what it is, again, going back to mental health and how important it is that even if you are an amazing Muslim and you pray 5 times a day, things can happen. Anything can happen. And there's that dua, ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit. Yeah, so like even anything can happen. Our heart can change at any minute, right? So, and with mental health, it's literally sometimes a chemical imbalance in your brain. And it can make you do something that you regret, regardless if it's committing suicide, killing others, addiction. We have a huge problem in our community with addiction. We don't talk about that enough. We have so many issues that are happening, and we forget, even with our children and our students, there's literally something called information overload. They are exposed to so much. And the more that we sweep all this under the rug, the more they're going to go find out from the wrong people. Another thing I want to talk about with grief is that grief is not linear, meaning that grief is not in a line. There are different steps of grief, right? I think it's like denial, sadness, depression, acceptance, and I think everyone literally thinks it's just going to be like, oh, you know, but literally if you go online right now and you look at like stages of grief, like it's kind of like this like funny thing where it's like you think it's a line, but it's really all scribble scrabbles, right? It's all over the place. And from somebody who actually experienced grief, you're not supposed to make it about you, but as much as like I'm a therapist or, you know, trying to be a practicing Muslim, grief is something that you're not meant to like deal with it. It's not something that you have all the answers to. There's days where, even if it's 10 years later, there's days where you feel like you're strong and you can say the name of the person that passed away, and there's days where you will cry all day just from remembering that person, or that person comes in your dream, whatever it may be. And it's okay. It's okay. And I think it's really important to remember what you want to tell people that are going through grief. I think there's a lot of focus on, like, even with depression, if you're a good Muslim and you're praying 5 times a day, you're connected to Allah, there's no such thing as depression. That's not true. Yes, of course we need to be connected to Allah, and we have to do our part. We do have to do our part. That's why even there's the morning adhkar and the evening adhkar. You have to do your part, of course, but then we also have to recognize that sometimes, even when we're doing that, we still need that extra help. Whether it is going to your imam or your sheikh or your therapist or your doctor, maybe it's something as small as I don't know, vitamin deficiency, and you're lacking it and you need that. You won't know unless you do your part. And then maybe talking about a few things and what not to say to others, like, it's okay, you know, you're strong, you got this, don't cry. I hate when people say don't cry. In the summer, I think it was about to be summer, sorry, in May, we actually had 2 girls in our school who, I'm actually wondering if the janazah was here. Anyways, their dad just suddenly passed away. These girls were 7 and 9, just suddenly, nothing. I was actually in the class as teachers, we were talking to them. We had like a little lesson that day, not knowing that then we find out that their dad passed away, and I know this, the teacher knows this, and I'm looking at these 2 girls and I can't say anything, and literally we go to their house at 6 p.m. and we break the news to them, and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, like, how do I do this as an expert, as an adult, as whatever? And I had no words, and sometimes it's okay not to have the words, and sometimes it's okay to not even say anything, just be that shoulder to lean on. And sometimes you actually have to say to that person, like, I don't know what to tell you, but I am here for you. And whatever here for you means, you tell me. Whether it means I'm going to bring you food, whether it means I'm going to take the rest of the kids and give you that space, whether it means just leave that person alone. There's so many definitions, and everyone is entitled to the definition. Even within the same family, you'll have something that devastating that happens or very traumatic, and people that come from the same womb, siblings, will deal with things completely different, right? You'll have that one person that acts out. You'll have the person that becomes extremely lonely and does not want to talk to anyone, and that's okay, because some people don't want to verbalize. Some people act it out. Some people will turn to Allah even more, and you'll even see sometimes the worst comes out of you during these moments, and you actually turn away from Allah, right? And that's also a test. It doesn't mean you're a horrible person and that's khalas, it's the end. It actually just means that maybe you need that more of that support. And as a community, I love how you keep mentioning community. I feel we forget what community means. It doesn't just mean that, we get together for Salat al-Jum'ah and that's about it. Community means so much more. And when they say it takes a village to raise children, it takes a village to do everything, even especially in an Islamic community. There's just so many things going on in my head trying to figure out what else I should mention. I think going back to those girls, yes. So I realized when we came to the janazah, the mom was in complete shock, right? That's one of the biggest things that happens when grief happens, right? Denial, shock, you don't know what you're saying. And I remember the mom making the daughters come to the janazah, and then she wanted them to, janazah, and she wanted them to go to the burial. So I was like, listen, ask them. They're old enough. And so she did, and they said, we don't want to go to the burial. And she took it so, offensively and cried, how can you not want to see your dad? This is, the last place he's going to be, because you understand he's with Allah. And so it's she's in a moment where she's in shock, and she could say whatever she wants, and that's okay. That's where the community, that's where the family, that's where everyone else comes in, and that's where you have to kind of take over and be like, you know what, I don't think that's what's best for your kids right now. Let's help. So actually a friend took the girls with her daughters, and they kind of spent the rest of the day. People were judging, how can you go take them out for ice cream, or how can you? But that's okay, because they're children and they grieve differently, right? And then I saw people telling the girls, don't cry. Do you understand that your dad is with Allah? What more do you want? And I'm like, it's a 7-year-old, it's a 9-year-old. So we just being mindful of what we say to others and how we say it is really important. That's kind of what's going on in my head right now, because I just feel like we forgot how to talk to one another, and we forget that we're humans and that we have emotions and we have, different ways of processing. And then probably one thing that sticks in my mind that I try whenever we talk about grief or we have grief workshops, I don't have any actual visuals, but maybe you guys can kind of think of it like a bottle or a jar, right? So everyone thinks that grief is, so let's just imagine grief is this tiny ball that doesn't change and it stays the same size, but people think that grief just gets bigger or it gets smaller. But really what happens is you're the bottle, you're the jar, and you're the one growing. So with experience, with time heals. Some people agree with that, some people don't. I think what happens is that you just grow and you make more space to deal with that grief. The grief stays the same, but you grow as a person, so you're able to hold the grief a lot better. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, no, Jazakumullah khair. I think we're going to hand it to Q&A before you just want to add, jump off the 2 points that you talked about. You said communication. I think that's very essential. A lot of parents, now we're all parents, many are parents here, right? Now think about what I'm saying here. My child here, mashallah, is such a nice child, obedient, quiet, listens to what I say. This child, such a bad child, always talks back. Yes or no? A lot of people, they differentiate that a good child is the quiet one, the one who just does things, and the one who's bad is the one who's talking too much. And what they don't understand is that's miscategorization altogether. This child who's quiet may be drowning in their depression and anxiety. They're tired of their parents, they're tired of their problems, and they don't want to fight it anymore. That doesn't make them a good child. That makes them an alarm that's ringing and blaring. This child needs help. And this child who's talking back is trying to tell you, don't you get it? I need help. They're both trying to express in different ways, but we miscategorize it and we say, this is an obedient child and this one's a bad child. What's my point here? Communication is so essential, and it only becomes healthy and productive if you let every person be who they are. One will scream, one will whisper, one will write it down, one will show it with their body. Allow them to communicate. Because I love one point that the sister said, if they're not going to come to you, their problems don't end. They're going somewhere. But they're going to people who are as adolescent and immature in that situation as they are. Kids don't just pick up marijuana, drugs, inject themselves, OD on drugs or on pills because they have nothing better to try. It's because they found a wall between their loved ones and themselves repeatedly that pushed them to people who told them to do things that now are costing them their life. Does everyone understand this? So a healthy communication is what? Where a husband and wife can say whatever's on their mind, and neither creates a barrier preventing the other to do so. A healthy relationship between a child and a parent is where a child can be who they are. Respectfully, take off that hat of Asia, Southeast Asia, and Arabia, that when we were with our parents and grandparents, we just listened and did what they told us to do. That's not how it is. That is a contributing factor towards the snowball effect of this problem. Let everyone speak. I just gave the example in the Salatul Istisqa. And Bedouin comes in and he says, Ya Rasulullah, make dua. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never rebuked him. Are you crazy? Don't you know this is Salatul Jum'ah? Can't you see people sitting quietly? Why do you have to come and talk? Don't you see I'm doing something? Can't you wait till later? These are things we say to our children. These are things we say to our spouses. But Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, yeah, sure, we'll do it. What's the Quran full of in Surah Baqarah? يَسْأَلُونَكَ يَسْأَلُونَكَ يَسْأَلُونَكَ. Allah didn't have to tell us that they're asking you, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, about the moon. They're asking you about the menses. They're asking you about drinking. They're asking you about gambling. They're asking you about the Shahrul Haram, qitalin fi. Allah didn't have to say that. He could have just said, this is the hukam and this is the command. But Allah is saying, they're asking you, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Allah is responding, meaning Allah is creating the communication gap that's what was in between. The deficiency was what? The answer. Allah facilitated the answer for Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What's the point? Just because you don't know something doesn't mean you tell your child, be quiet. You know what's the best thing to say to your child? And believe me, it's the hardest thing. I learned it after so many mistakes. Let's sit down together and figure this out. I don't know it. But let's sit down and figure out. You know what happens in that? Your child doesn't lose the respect of you in their eyes. They admire you more because you feel that they are worthy enough for you to sit down and learn something with them. That's how families grow. That's how family not only grow, they tackle problems that come their way. And the last thing that I'll say, and we'll open it for questions and answers, is istirja. Istirja is so important in our deen. I learned this in two scenarios. One was in person, one was on a TikTok video. In Medina Munawwara, every time we go, I tell my group, go and attend a janazah. And go participate in the burial of a janazah. That year specifically, as the janazahs go, and if you've been to Medina, mashallah, or Makkah, they hold the janazah and they walk. They don't stop. And so if you catch up to the janazah, you're lost. So I saw a janazah going, I'm trying to catch up, it's gone, that one's gone, that one's gone. Then I see a man holding a baby in his hand. I'm like, you know what, I'll follow you. So we went, we did the janazah. I gave him my number. I said, I'm here if I can help you. I know I'm just an umrah. He's like, no, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'm like, I don't get it. You know, alhamdulillah, this is tragic. He said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. There's something that's embedded into the psyche and spirituality of the people in Arabia, that this is something they learned growing up, that merely saying it helps them cope with the tragedy. That's what Allah says. At the moment of tragedy, say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Allah will help you cope. So how was a father coping with a newborn child, this child that's dead, that he buried with his hand, without one tear coming out of his eyes? Was because he had the ability to trust the decree of Allah. If we are fighting with the reality of the situation, the news of the situation, the circumstances of the situation, the premise of the situation, but then we're also fighting with the one who allowed the situation to happen, we're not going to win. You can say, how did this person die in a car accident? How did this person die there? How did this happen? But Allah had written this person to go at that time. The circumstances just became an excuse. But that person was destined to go. It gives you some energy to fight this battle. Mike Tyson speaks about his craze and his stability. When Mike Tyson became a Muslim and he was an athlete, he went to jail, whatever else. But when he went really crazy in that sense, he talks about this, was when his 4-year-old daughter died on a treadmill. Went on a treadmill and I think it was on or something and the daughter died. He couldn't accept it. I went into drugs, I went to alcohol, it was so bad. But what gave you this stability now? My faith in Allah. Brothers and sisters, people find Allah as a solution for their predicaments and problems. Allah gave us that solution before He tested us. How come we're not seeing Allah as part of our solution? So brothers and sisters, this place is more than just a community center and a place to pray your prayers. It's a place to find Allah. May Allah allow us to find Him in good days so that He's with us in hard days. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to trust it and rely on Him and accept His decree in all circumstances. May Allah allow us to reach out to one another in a non-judgmental way. May Allah allow us to help one another, heal one another, bring smiles on the faces of one another. And may Allah make this a source of His pleasure and our admittance into paradise. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Sisters and brothers, questions, thoughts, concerns. You know why we were talking? I got a message from an 86-year-old man from Lubbock, Texas, who said, I am suffering from depression. Please make dua for me. I didn't even know this man. It doesn't end if we don't help each other. It's not like you grow out of this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heal him. May Allah grant him stability. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him afiyah and sakina. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be with him and his family. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Any questions, please? It's open forum. I know this was a last minute program and I'm very grateful that mashallah community came out. Sisters or brothers, any questions for the sisters and myself, please feel free to ask, inshallah. Anyone? Any thoughts? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's a spiritual aspect to it, to the Prophet, our anguish and the pain in Allah, so that is some level of strength.
Mm-hmm.
But there is another aspect that human needs, even though that you mentioned in a rough manner, but I think it needs further elaboration. That back where we come from, right? You know, from we have a family and extended family.
Yes.
So that emotional support system is existing there. Even our faith, one dimension, the family connection, another dimension. So when we have problems, we have an avenue to let it go, dissipate gradually in small amounts. That gives the emotional stability. That kind of a family structure you don't have here. So community, address that community needs to come together, become that emotional support. It's easier said than done. It's very difficult for people to emotionally open up to the community because often there's a lot of judgment involved. That safe place doesn't exist in the community. Not in this community, any Muslim community.
True.
So, one is easy to say we have to build the spiritual strength. But ultimately, even the help from Allah comes to the human dimension. So I think there is a more need to address that human aspect, that interaction required, that emotional support without judgment aspect. And people are not comfortable coming out and sharing their problems. Exactly. I open this to your...
No, mashallah, jazakumullah khair. As you said, I'll hand it to you too, but like, it's easy to say that we need Allah and we need each other, but how do you actually blend the two? Like, how do you... I can find Allah because Allah won't judge me. Allah won't, speak about my problems to the world. But as a community, any community today, you can't trust anyone. One person finds out one thing about you, they add some mirch masala, garam masala, tandoori masala, and a bit of haldi to make sure the color stays. And they're going to spread it. So my thing is simple. Let's become the masjid that builds that true community, inshallah. I have in my vision, inshallah, that we're going to be doing, I'm planning to start safe space classes, like father classes, mother classes, parenting, like just spaces where you sit and talk. And there's actually people in the community who've come up to me saying, you know what, can we just have tarbiyah circle, just sit down and talk. There doesn't have to be a curriculum, there doesn't have to be a book, just so we can talk and create safe spaces. Because I think the therapist will agree, speaking is something, you need the confidence, and someone to listen is what builds the trust that you can speak. And then what you do together is, let's make dua. I remember I was in a village in Pakistan, and a brother came to this person I was talking to. He's like, this happened with me, that happened. Oh, okay, then you do this. Let's do this. Dua karte. They made dua to karte. I'm like, wow, like this guy just came up to you, didn't feel resentment to speak about his issues to you, and that too in front of me, who's an outsider, and you advised them, and then you made dua together, and like he felt happy. That's called trust. And if there's anything that speaks about the therapists of our times, the prophets and everyone else, alayhimus salam, they had two specific qualities, distinct, that went through all of them. Inni lakum nasihun ameen. Verily, I'm for you a well-wisher and trustworthy. If we can become well-wishers for one another and trustworthy, then inshallah, as an ummah, we can flourish. So I hope, inshallah, with your help and the help of the community, we can create such a bond by putting aside our agendas and putting forward Allah's path and help each other, inshallah. And I pray that we can do that, inshallah. That's a good place to start. Sisters, anything to add to that?
In my clinic, 75%, I want to say, are Muslim patients, and it's a safe space, fully confidential. If we judge or say anything to anyone else in the masjid, I'd lose my license. And also, Day of Judgment, I tell them that I can't, so I see clients at the masjid at Jummah, but I don't say anything and keep that safe space, and I think that's really important. Because you're right, when you tell people in the community, you're not always going to have that trust. And a story, actually, I run a monthly women's support group, Muslim women's support group. And so before starting, 6 months ago, someone called me, and she was like, can I come? I just saw your flyer from the Plano Masjid group. And I said, yeah, sure, come. And she shared that. I've been going to church for 2 years, because I was in domestic abuse, and I'm divorced now, but I was going to church for the group. I didn't know that Muslims had a place, right? And I run it every month, mashallah, and Muslim women come out, and actually got a request, my husband got a request from some men that, can your wife do it for us? So inshallah, that's in the future, but confidentiality is huge, and trust, and not having that judgment.
That's right.
The only thing I thought of was, subhanAllah, like, insan comes from the word nisyan, right? So, like, we're actually made to be, I guess, forgetful beings. And so, as much as we talk and we try, I think we have to give ourselves just some type of leeway that, like, it's okay if we mess up, even as a community. And, it's easier said than done is so true. Like, I always say that. Everything is easier said than done. But we are humans, and we have to remember that, because that's just part of, like, even as a community, you're going to trial and error, and there's going to be things that work and things that don't work. And inshallah, like, with everybody's, like, support, we're going to learn what works for this community, because what works for this community might not work for another community, subhanAllah. So, yeah.
That's very true, mashallah. Sisters, anything? Anything from the sisters? I think what the sister said about talking to your children and being open about the situation, having the ability to converse, because it's coming out on the news, the names have come out, and the circumstances surrounding it has been already categorized. But if your kids were able to come up to you and talk to you about that, how come someone in our community did this and this happened, there's two things you have to, I would say, from a spiritual aspect. Number one is speak about how we all are responsible to make our decisions, and let's all try to make the right decisions and the best decisions. Talk about how death is inevitable. We all must live a life knowing that Allah will take us back at any time. And number three, what Imam Abdul Rahman Bashir said today at the janazah, don't pass judgments. One brother grabbed me as I parked and I was running into the masjid. The parking was a chaotic thing there at Al Masjid, and he said to me, one of my friends didn't come because they felt they shouldn't be here, right, for the janazah. So I said in response to them, I said, and that's our community, unfortunately, but we'll change that, inshallah. I said to him, do you know in our deen there is something called ma'dur, someone who is excused. If a person is in a state of ma'dur, even prayer and stuff, like there's a whole different category here. So Who knows? That person was a ma'adhur that led to this, and Allah will pardon them for this. We don't know. So as Imam Abdul Rahman Bashir said, leave that job to Allah. Something tragic has happened, yes. Don't get so caught up on who did what and what happened when, and don't worry about that. Focus on the fact that we should be talking to our children, our families. If they bring these stuff up to us, we should be able to talk to them about these situations in a productive manner. And at the end, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, أَكْثِرُوا ذِكْرَ هَذِهِ اللَّذَّاتِ. Remember excessively the one that breaks desires, and that is what, everyone? Death. Talk about death. Talk about how death in Islam is not the end, it's the beginning, it's a continuation. We today as Muslims shouldn't fear death because Islam has given every single detail of this journey no other faith has. So we got the entire itinerary with the photos and 3D views and panoramic views of what's going to happen. It's all in our hadith and Quran. So we talk about these things, and may Allah keep everyone with afiyah, inshallah, ameen. With that being said, inshallah, we request all of you to know that here at IECC, we are working and striving together. The Shura, Sakina services, your scholars and teachers are all working towards the mental health and spiritual health and physical well-being of our community. And it doesn't happen because of a few, it happens because of all of us. So everyone is requested to, inshallah, do whatever they can to help one another so we can work as one community, inshallah. I met Dr. Asif at the Janazah, and mashallah, Dr. Asif is contributing his time here also as a psychologist, clinical psychologist, and mashallah, we have therapists, and inshallah, that will continue to grow. But remember, we all are here to listen. So if you can't find me, or you find Sheikh Arsalan, sit us down and just tell us you want to talk. And understand, yes, we do have a million and one things, and we have a lot of things that we're facing ourselves, but we can at least spare 5 minutes for each other. And also, if you see someone who is depressed walking outside, if you feel comfortable and in a non-threatening way that that person's not a threat, just walk up and say, Salam, how are you? Put your hand on their shoulder. You know, this is my name. You want to talk about something? Believe me, that goes a long way. That goes a long way. May Allah make us true brothers and true sisters in Islam. May Allah allow us as a community to restore the reality of what it means to be an ummah. Ameen. May Allah allow us to honor one another, trust one another, be well-wishers one to another, and to pray for one another. Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, with that we will conclude. We want to say Jazakumullah khair to two of our esteemed therapists who've taken out the time at the last minute to come and be with us. We thank Sheikh Arsalan for graciously representing us in Allen Masjid tonight as he mourns with the community as we mourn with them also. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless the Shura for putting this together and all of you for attending, inshallah. Dr. Asif, if you could give a few words, inshallah.
Yeah, I'm sorry I had to step out for a moment. I just want to discuss and just give some statistics to everyone and then also resources, because I was at the Allen Masjid and a few people came and they asked me what can they do, who can they approach. So let me tell you, the depression is a killer disease. I'm also I'm board certified child psychiatrist as well as adult psychiatrist, so I see everybody. I'm currently a medical director for the guidance center. We have like 8 or 9 clinics. There is one clinic here in Plano, and there are a lot of resources here in this county. So I just wanted everybody to know about that. Depression is a killer disease. It wants to kill you once you have it. Talking is fine and dandy. The sister, Jazakallah khair, Imam Sahib is available. You can definitely talk. But once you have a clinical depression, the statistics are in women, it's 1 in 4 women. In men, it's 1 in 6 men have clinical depression that may require medications. So please get the psychiatric evaluations so that we can figure out whether you need medications in addition to talking and everything. So this is very important, and there are a lot of resources available. So 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men are clinically depressed, and they need psychiatric intervention. Not only talking is not going to help that much. The success rate for therapy is about 30%. Success rate with medications is about 50%. When you combine them, it goes up to 80 to 90%. So it's very important to understand that part and don't be shy about that. Now, people who have depression, or people who commit suicide, completed suicide, it's known that about 95% of them have identifiable mental illness. 70% of them have some sort of clinical depression. The depression, they walk around with these suicidal thoughts, and everybody has them. But once you have suicidal thoughts with plans and intentions, it's a psychiatric emergency. You have to do something. So either you can call 911. Now there's a new number. It's called 988. You can call that number and talk to someone online in the privacy of your home. If you have insurance, please contact your insurance and they will tell you where to go. If you don't have insurance and you live in Collin County, you can contact Life Path Systems. It's free of charge. You can see a psychiatrist there, a psychologist, therapist. You get free blood work. You get free medicine. There are a lot of resources available. If you cannot go there, get accepted in this masjid, we have a clinic. It's available. Brother is here. He's a coordinator for the clinic. He can definitely help you with that, Brother Nair. You can make an appointment, get an evaluation done, and we can tell you and point you towards the right resources. There is no excuse. Unfortunately, the trend used to be people used to kill themselves or kill other people. Now is becoming, mass murder suicides, and it's unfortunate this is happening in our community, and there are a lot of resources available. Again, depression is a killer disease. It wants to kill you. You have to do something to save yourself. So please, if you cannot or you feel embarrassed utilizing the resources in the community, call 988 or 911 and get the help that you need. Jazakallah.
Doctor, one quick question. So if there's someone that we know in our family or in our circle that have the signs of depression, how could we help that individual?
Yeah, so initially, the first thing one should do is get an evaluation, whether it's from the psychologist, the sisters are here, or you want to do it. As I said, you can call your insurance and get information. If you don't have insurance, go to Life Path System, or you can come here and we can evaluate you to see if you meet the certain criteria and get the diagnosis done. Once you have the right diagnosis, whether it's depression, is it anxiety, is it bipolar depression, is it adjustment disorder, is it cultural issues, whatever it is, once you have the right diagnosis, then we can offer you the right treatment. Generally, the etiology, the causes and the treatment is biopsychosocial. And in this case, for us believing people, spiritual. So biological is medication, psychological and social psychotherapy, and spiritual is what Imam Sahib does here, spiritual counseling. You can give things to read and do and connect. So there's a lot of resources available. So it depends. As my teacher used to say, it's not the quality that matters in psychiatry, it's the quantity. How bad? All of us might have gone through some depression in our life or anxiety or whatever. Is it that bad that needs some kind of intervention? What kind of intervention? Is it psychosocial intervention? Is it medicine with the therapy? Some cases when you're in emergency and people have actively suicidal, they need to be hospitalized, stay in a safe place, and the therapy starts there. And then they are downgraded to intensive outpatients. Then they come to regular outpatients where we see them. There are mobile services. There's 911. There's 988. A lot of resources. But again, the depression is a killer disease. It will tell you not to get any help. And you have to be active in fighting with this disease and take it to the next level. If your family member is suffering, bring them. Please bring them in. Utilize these resources. These are all available to you. And once you get the proper diagnosis, then you can take it from there.
Yes. So, like for example, Zaid is suffering and I see those signs. How do I get Zaid to go see someone, especially if they are an adult? Yeah, as an adult, right? As an adult.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is because I moved from New York. In New York, it used to be different. People will come for evaluation, and we reserved the right to, tell them. And then a lot of times they don't want to get admitted. If we feel that they are danger to himself or others or something like that, we would admit them without their will. And then another psychiatrist will certify that, and they will be in for 14 days. During that, they get intensive therapy and get better. Unfortunately, in Texas, this is not the rule. You have more autonomy here. So when people come in, we try to convince them, tell the family member to bring the person to an emergency room or psychiatric emergency. and then we have to tell them. The only way to get people in or committed is against their will is to go to the court and get a court order to admit them against their will. And so sometimes in the outpatient, we also get court orders to administer medications and injections to people because they don't understand. As I said, the first thing you lose is your judgment. You know you're sick, you know you need help, but you don't want to because the depression, these thoughts will tell you not to get any help. And this is what happens. Unfortunately, all these tragedies are as a result of that. So there's not much you can do in this state. Everything is voluntary. You just be nice to people and tell them. And a lot of people I've seen, they are more comfortable seeing Imam Sahib than any of us because they don't think, why should I see somebody? I'm not crazy. So yeah, Imam Sahib, sure, yeah, I'll go there. He'll tell me about Allah, Rasul, Quran. I can do that. That's easier. And then when they come and say Imam Sahib said, hey, this is not my case. This is your case. So then we take a lot of people come to me, we talk. I'm available here. Anybody, you need to just hold me curbside. We can talk and then point towards the resources. But the sister's question, how we can convince them or force them, we cannot, unfortunately. I know if sisters have another way of handling this question.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Asif. So we work together, actually, psychiatrists and therapists, and when we see that there is a need for biopsychosocial evaluation or medicine, we do reach out to Dr. Asif and his colleagues, and I think it's togetherness, and then you could, through therapy and talk therapy, we tell them, hey, you need this medication management, and then working together, it's a whole village.
Yeah, it's the whole system, right? It's the whole system. So, alhamdulillah, when they call Sakina services and, we evaluate from there, is this something for the psychologist, the therapist, or for the imam, or if it's an emergency that requires something else. So, inshallah, we will grow together. We will help each other, inshallah. May Allah allow us to help ourselves also. Ameen. In closing, inshallah, Brother Manzoor, if you could say some final words, and we'll make dua. Manzoor bhai, inshallah, please. Initial signs of depression?
Now, depression, as I said, is not the quality that matters in psychiatry, it's the quantity. So there's a book, it's called DSM, Diagnostic and Statistic Manual in Psychiatry. You can just Google it. What are the criteria for clinical depression? You have to have 5 out of 9 symptoms for 2 weeks to call it a clinical depression. 5 out of 9 symptoms. So you can go there, there's a checklist, it's called PHQ-9. Anybody can do that, it's a screening test. People, when they come to my clinic, they already gone through that and they already do it. A lot of clinics use it as a screening test. PHQ-9 it's called. So if you do that, you have 5 out of 9 symptoms for 2 weeks. That's the criteria for major depressive disorder and needs clinical intervention.
She wants to respond to the question. The microphone?
Oh, okay, I'm like,
No.
Go ahead. Lack of sleep, not being able to sleep, different affects, like different physical. You could tell, like when you see red flags and they're kind of off, and it's more than 2 weeks, then.
And sometimes sleeping too much too.
Sleeping too much too. Yeah.
Either sleeping too much or not enough sleep. Subhanallah, you have to both extreme. No, I just wanted to say Jazakumullah khairan to Imam Azhar and these two sisters in a very short notice putting this together. This sister grew up here in here. I know her from very little, so I address her uncle and she addressed me uncle. So, mashallah, it worked out very well. So this shows that the brothers and sisters who grew up in this community is giving back to this community. So again, Jazakumullah khairan, and may Allah bless all of us. Just so that when we were growing up as a child, we didn't have this problem, but we were looking for help. And the help was very hard to find. But alhamdulillah, as they say, we live in a land of opportunity. Even in Plano, Texas, in ISCC, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us to start a service called Sakina service free of cost. So please pass this word. Anybody who needs it, they can call, they can make an appointment, and they can deter whether it needs a pastoral counseling, whether it's a regular counseling, or whether it needs a calling 911 right away. So pass this word that we have this service, and we are eager to provide who needs it, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين والدنيا والآخرة نسألك اللهم من الخير كله ونعوذ بك اللهم من الشر كله سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Inshallah we'll have the adhan and then inshallah Salatul Isha will be in 15 minutes inshallah.